Happy New Year. It's EJ here, one of the co-hosts of Behind the Mask, and joining me today is Lori and T. This is episode 35, The Masks of Resolutions. Just a friendly reminder that anything discussed in this podcast is not to be used as a diagnosis or replacement for conversations with your own doctors, therapists, psychologists, or other medical professionals.
Well, 'tis the season to set a resolution, a New Year's resolution. Yeah, but got some statistics that I found kind of disturbing. 50% of new gym members cancel their membership by the end of January.
I believe it.
I
believe it.
was shocked, 156 million people will probably give up on whatever their resolution is before you can say confetti. That's not very long. It's like you write it down and out your mind. It's done. Okay, I wrote it down. I don't know. 43% of all people expect to fail. We're gonna have to look at that one, T, a little more. But they expect to fail before February. And 1 out of 4 quit within the first week of setting their New Year's resolutions. And only 9% will successfully keep their resolutions. And we'll put the links where I found that information. EJ will do that, our techie guru, at the end, but we'll put those links in there and you can look at some of the articles that I read. And ladies, I was just blown out of the water. The one that really got me, and I know that's what we really want to address, T, is that 43% of all people expect to fail. Can you tell us a little more about that? Why? I'm curious. That sounds very sad.
I think part of what we need to understand is, why are people making resolutions? What's the point of it? Why are they doing it? Are they doing it because that's what we do? We make New Year's resolutions. It sounds nice to be able to say, this year I'm going to do things different, but do we give it much more thought than that? Like, well, this year my resolution is to not be late to work anymore. And that's it. That's all the thought I give it. Well, it's not going to change. And I don't address what's causing me to be late, or whatever it is that's brought on this desire to change. I think we all have things we'd like to do differently or do better or stop doing or whatever, but we don't really give it much more thought than that. And so there's no dedication to it. We don't have dedication to something we don't really truly expect to succeed.
I think this is a good time. I looked up the definition of resolution. And I found it funny because I kind of found it a little contradictory, but it kind of makes sense with what you're saying. It says a firm decision, and then it says or determination. And I'm like, oh, well, now that okay, that doesn't sound that like so solid to me. I'm like, wait a minute, what happened to the firm decision? I just felt like the or was like okay, or this, and I'm like, maybe that's because of that. Maybe that's part of the reason it doesn't stick. And you mentioned some really good things about, not identifying root causes of the things. And I am okay, I'm gonna be careful. I'm very interested in getting this book that I have heard so much about, I may get it, I may not. I'm not making a resolution about it.
You haven't made a
But
determination?
yes, I haven't made a determination yet, but I have heard that many people have found success with a book called Atomic Habits, right? Yeah, Atomic Habits. And the thing that I've been told about this book, and when I read online about it, and what interested me is that it claims to really help you get, like, to set the right kinds of, and I know, of goals rather than resolutions. And we're going to talk more about goals later and why they can be more helpful. But I think the biggest thing I can think about is there's no plan behind you. So at that point, I almost want to say it's more like a dream. I wish I could go to Disneyland this year. Well, yeah, I can wish I want to go to Disneyland every year, but unless I make a budget and set aside the money and then buy the tickets and then do, right? I'm like,
Well,
next year I'm going to be saying the same thing. I wish I could go to Disneyland this year.
so you said some things that kind of stood out, and I've got a lot of thoughts on this because resolutions have kind of come about in the last, I don't know, like 50, 60 years. Is like at the new year, there's something new you want to achieve. And that's great to set goals, to set things you want to do. Unfortunately, we live in a society where we'll do it tomorrow. Like currently, we're in a procrastination society. We're in a society that, yeah, we could do it today, but we'll just do it tomorrow because it's easier. And unfortunately, that happens a lot. And then well, we'll do it next year. Well, then, so the new year comes around and that resolutions time. I personally, I don't know, for like the last 10, 15 years, I haven't set New Year's resolutions. I've kind of given myself like the month of January to kind of see where, my month goes, what kind of direction I'm heading, to kind of make a plan for like what I want to achieve. So I'm not doing it at January. I'm doing it like early February, because then I'm like, okay, this is how so far it's going. So I'm going to aim for this year. And you said something about the definition about being or determined or determination.
Determination, yeah.
Well, think about like when we're determined to do something, nothing is going to stop us. So that's technically a firm thing. Like it is. And it's funny because you say, like, I hear resolution and I hear resolute, and then I hear Nicolas Cage in my head from The National Treasure when they're talking about something in a resolution, something that's firm, being like the Constitution or the Declaration of Independence, that kind of stuff.
Bill of Rights.
Yeah. So the things that are like, those have been determined to be parts of our country. So those are goals. Also, so to share a little bit, Lori and I in early December joined a gym. We did some research. We considered the YMCA. We considered a few other gyms in our area. We decided on one that has amenities for both of us that we need or want. And they also have personal trainers. And when we first joined, they're like, okay, let's get you set up for your first session. And I ended up doing mine. Lori, I can't remember the reason why she put it off for that day, because we were going to do it together. And I met with this trainer and I'm like, I want this is what I want. And I want to be healthier. I want to be able to, live longer. And I don't want to fall into the pits that both my parents go to, because I know I've talked about it on the podcast. Both of my parents, my mom was heavier growing up. She was more my size and lost a lot of weight because she had to. My dad was a bigger guy. He never really did lose the weight. And I don't want to be that when I'm 60 or 70 years old. So I want to make the changes now that I can build those habits from. And like Lori, you were talking about that Atomic Habits book. A lot of that is because we hear the phrase, it takes 31 or 21 days to build a habit. But it actually takes like 60 some odd days for it to actually stick. So that's like
more like 90 days.
Yeah, 60 to 90 days for it to really stick. So it's a trying thing. It's a time. And so, I did my first 2 training sessions. I really love my trainer. He's awesome. He was showing a lot, like how do you achieve goals? What are your goals? I'm like, sure, there's the broad goals of, well, I want to lose this amount of weight. I want to lose 150 pounds. Well, how do I get there? Am I looking at the 150? Because that's a lot of weight to lose. Or am I looking at the first step, which is making it consistently to the gym? And Lori and I have been doing that every week this entire month of December. You know, we're recording here on the last day of the month, or the last, week of the month. And we've made it consistently. We've made a plan. We found time in our day, a couple of days a week, that we can make it to the gym. That consistency is going to be the start. And the next step on that ladder of achieving that goal is, are you doing exercises, or are you just playing around? Are you willing to learn, or are you just there to kind of do things? Because I see a lot of people going in and out of that gym, and sometimes I wonder what they're there for. Because I feel like they're just standing around, looking around, drinking their water. Then they'll do a little exercise, or they'll do a stretch. And I'm not saying that that's wrong, because everybody does things differently. But are you really working out? Do you really know how that machine works? Can you, so I'm choosing in the new year, when I get my tax return, to actually pay for additional training sessions, because I want that accountability. I want to build that strength. And I may not lose a lot of weight right away, because I know muscle weighs more than fat. But I also want to be healthier, and the consistency that that's going to bring, that weekly session that I have with that person, is going to be so much easier and better for me than just, we'll see. I'll get there. But those stats about gym memberships, most gyms have $0 joining fees at the beginning of the year, because everybody wants to join a gym, because that's their goal. Oh, well, my resolution is I'm going to get healthy. And within 2 weeks of January, they're canceling their memberships because they're not going to use them. And it's sad. So I'm glad that Lori and I did this in December, because we didn't get into the bandwagon in January and then lose our focus, because we both have determinations.
Well, and I will say this, you brought something up that I think is key, and I'm sure there's a psychological thing behind this, but it was not easy for EJ and I to join that gym.
Yeah.
In that financially, we're not flush with cash.
Right.
She's got a steady 9 to 5, and I live on disability. There's no more money. I can't stretch it any farther, and it was a huge decision for us to say, we're going to make this investment, and then we're going, and so I think,
well, and to add to that,
success,
investment in ourselves, because we're used to investing in everybody else. We're not used to investing in ourselves and our health. We're used to investing in friends and family and doing things with them, and the just normal
we
stuff.
even talked about that. We're like, oh, should we be doing this?
And how many times on the podcast and how many times on the podcast do we talk about self-care is just as important as taking care of other people? And how can we take care of other people and put our masks on first if we're not doing that? So that was hard. I was like, I'm not going to spend, because you have to pay your first and last months, and you have to pay the joining fee and all that. So there's a lot of fees, and next thing you know, I'm dropping like $150 on this thing, and I'm like, what the heck am I doing?
Yeah, she almost backed out. She almost said, Lori, no.
Yeah, I was.
And if she had backed out, then she would have done it because she made a choice based on the information she had.
Yes,
right.
Yes. But let's go back to that investment piece. Yeah. What do you think psychologically is part of that? What does that do for a goal, and being part of that 9% rather than the what is it, 89% that don't make
91.
it? Yeah.
So kind of going back to a couple of things. First of all, I agree. We live in a procrastinating world. Like, why do today what I can do tomorrow, instead of why not do today what I could do tomorrow? I mean, if I can do it, why not just do it?
Right.
The other aspect of that is the things that we do today are the things that gives us instant gratification. So I think that's a piece that needs to be considered, is that oftentimes, like, let's say I made a resolution that I'm going to cut back on chips. I choose that because that's, one of my Achilles heels. I like salt.
Yeah, me too.
But what am I getting out of that? Now, if I don't stop and consider it and use that as part of my plan, I'm going to follow the instant gratification of eating those chips because that makes me feel good right now, if I'm not aware that I'm doing that. But so, yeah, there's procrastination and then there's instant gratification, and being able to train ourselves to be able to wait for the reward. But we have to be careful because sometimes people really can get hung up on delayed gratification and get real obsessive with that and then never really achieve it because they put it out too far. And so that can cut us off at our knees too. So it's being able to set those goals where we can reach them and feel some gratification and some success to motivate us to continue. So I think that a lot of what goes into not achieving our resolutions is one, why are we setting the resolution? Why are we doing it? Are we doing it because it's the thing to do at New Year's? Or are we doing it because it's a true change we want to make? And if it's a true change we want to make, we're not going to just do it at New Year's.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And that's why I think I'm hung up, and maybe that's why I've kind of avoided the whole New Year's resolution, because if it's a change I want to make, I don't want to just say I'm going to do it at the new year. I want to make that change and be the change when I want to make that change and not put it off, because that is something like, I want to lose weight. I'm not going to wait until a specific day to say, that's when I'm going to start. I don't know.
And using New Year's as a tool isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's just being aware of that, because setting dates when you're setting goals are important. Like, let's say if I want to quit smoking, they say set a date. Yeah. Set a date to quit by, or so any goal setting does involve going, okay, I need to do this at this point, this at this point, and we can use dates to do that. Now, sometimes hard dates are necessary and sometimes they're not. And so, and using New Year's as a way to help motivate you, I mean, it can't, that's not necessarily bad. That's probably why 9% do quit. But if you look at that 9%, I would be curious to know if that 9% who successfully achieve their New Year's resolutions, if they're setting goals throughout the year as well. If New Year's is the only time they set those kind of goals for change or whatever, if they're doing it other times, and how successful are they in general?
So
and then
my favorite new R word is reevaluate.
and that's super important.
And my second is reflection. So I think those are
super,
too, right?
Yes.
And in all the articles that I read, those two words were constantly coming up with how to be successful. And
so they're resolved, they reevaluate, and what was the other one?
Reflect.
So they can do all those R's.
Yep. And I just really, as a self-diagnosed perfectionist,
not touching that
OCD person, reevaluation is often something that I've skipped in my life, because that doesn't, in my perfectionist mind, I don't have time for that, and I don't need that, because it's always been a negative thing for me. So I'm going to add
another R. Okay. Realistic.
Yes.
So perfectionism isn't realistic.
Yeah.
So you have to have resolve, you have to have resolution, you have to have reevaluation, reflection, and it has to be realistic. And so when you go to reevaluate the situation, you're being realistic, like, okay, so this didn't work out here, but what I did learn from that, I can apply here, and we can reevaluate and put it, get back on the action.
Yeah. Go ahead, EJ.
Well, and there's a lot to that, like you're talking about being a perfectionist. I mean, I'm OCD, but my OCD is not the same as somebody else's OCD. You know, it's, I can literally see a mess and it doesn't bother me. I just look past it. You know, that's just, and Lori, on the other hand, looks
I'm
at the mess and
cringing
freaks out
visually
and
right
like, oh my God,
here.
I have to clean that. But you know, I've seen this before. My trainer showed it to me, and he drew two pictures, two ladders. The first ladder had a person standing at the bottom with three big rungs, like big distances in between each rung. The other ladder had a person at the bottom, and there was little tiny slashes and lines and rungs every like couple of, you know, little spots. And he says, who's going to be more successful?
I
said,
love
well,
it.
he's like, and I said, well, the one that, you know, has the multiple rungs. And he said, exactly. You can't go into the gym, or any goal for that matter, with the large goal in mind, because you're never going to achieve it. But
Right.
you can do one thing. And one of the things that has stuck with me, and I encourage Lori with it, is every day you just have to get 1% better than you were yesterday. He says, that doesn't mean you have to do all 30 reps today. But if you can do 20 and then work to 22 and then 25 and then 30.
Oh,
says,
you found a good one, EJ.
Yeah,
I
he's
love this.
good.
He is so good.
Yeah.
And he's got experience. He's got a person who's he's been training with somebody who is was my weight currently and is now down to the 250. So that's why he's like, I'm confident we can do this. And I'm grateful. Like, I'm like, wow, somebody like gets it. And because I've asked my doctors over the years, like, how can I lose some of this weight? What exercise? And they have no idea. And even my trainer said, he's like, I think doctors should do a whole session or semester on exercise. He's like, there's so many doctors that don't know a thing about exercise and what the good exercises are versus the other one. But just having him encourage that. He's like, he's like, it's good to have those goals. Like, okay, you want to lose 150 pounds. Well, let's focus on that first 50. And then, you know, but it's multiple things involved in that. And so when you're talking about dates, you're right. Dates are a great thing because you can lay out, like I literally was just talking to somebody. He's a part of our church body. I was worked with him in April, and I hadn't really talked much with him since. And we just talked because I'm going to work with him again. And I was sharing that, you know, I have my novel that I'm working on editing, so I need it published. And he goes, okay, well, when are you going to publish it? He says, I don't know, sometime in 2023. And he's like, okay, no. He's like, you gotta put a date on that. He's like, you know me. He's like, I need dates. I was like, okay. So I gave him a date. He said, well, how are you going to get there? So what do you mean? He goes, well, what do you got to do first? What's your first step? I says, well, I guess I'm going to have to finally cave and let my VP read it, which would be Lori, because as editor-in-chief for the company, Lori is my, you know, second in command. And I'm like, it's very hard for me to do that because that's like releasing that into the atmosphere. But he's like, okay, when are you going to do that? And I was like, okay, by January 1st, I will have it to Lori. I haven't done it yet, but I'm like, when I meet with him next, I want to do it. So I'm like, Lori, hold me accountable to that. Tina, hold me accountable because I want to do that. And I'm like, I really appreciate my trainer as well as this guy that I was talking to, because I'm like, it's helping me change my mindset a little bit on that. And I'm like, okay, let's stop looking at these big goals and focus on the little ones, the realistic ones. Can I go to the gym 3 days a week? Yeah, that's realistic. You know, and we're getting a routine down. We spend about an hour in the pool. We do exercises. Lori does laps and some exercises. I do cardio and different pool aquatic activities. You know, I'll get in the gym and I'll do some weightlifting and stuff when, you know, certain times of the month. So I'm not just doing pool exercises, but I'm active for an hour in the pool. And I feel like that is building consistency. I've resolved myself to, I'm going to stick with this. And I'm already seeing results. I mean, I've lost like 5 pounds at least since I last weighed myself. And I see that as a success because it's happening. And unfortunately, some people, like Tina was talking about, the instant gratification. If I went in this and I said, I'm only lost 5 pounds, what? I'm like, okay, and I was expecting 50, yeah, that's going to be super discouraging, and it's going to pull me back.
So how
So
do we work with some of those things, T?
yeah.
So when I'm working with clients on goal setting and topics along this line, there's a few things. We've talked about a lot of them. So we've talked about resolution. We've talked about realistic. We've talked about reflection and reevaluation. All those things are super important. I also heard another R word, which is routine. That's that setting goals, timelines and stuff like that. And what am I going to do to get there? So some things that we're missing is, first of all, do we know what it looks like to have achieved that goal? Have we ever been in that position before? A lot of times we haven't. A lot of times, like if I were to set a goal weight at this weight and I've never been there before, I don't know what that's going to feel like. I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't know what my reaction is going to be. So I need to keep that in mind. So if we have any idea of what, and we don't know if we've succeeded unless we've been there before. How do we know we've succeeded? And that's what I often ask clients, because we set goals at the beginning of my services with them is, what do you want to achieve with counseling?
Right.
Do you know what that looks like? Have you ever been there before or anything like it before? How will you know? How will you know that you made it? I've seen people set goals and they end up shooting past it, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but they don't know that they can stop and reflect and go, hey, I made it. So they don't get that sense of success. So that's one of the good things about setting those smaller goals, like that the trainer said, setting the many rungs, so that each rung is something you can stop and go, oh, I made this one. I can enjoy that. Like, whoa, I did it. Now I feel good. I feel like I can do the next one. So setting those smaller goals allows us to feel some success. Also, goals should be measurable. It kind of goes hand in hand with what I was just saying. So if someone says to me, I just want to feel better, well, what does that mean? How can we measure that? What are you feeling right now? So you got to kind of be able to, that's that reflection, be able to sit in yourself and go, this is where I'm at right now. And I am experiencing this amount of time throughout the day or week or whatever. And so I know what it is right now. Now I need to set a measurable goal of, in 6 months, I want this to be 50% of that. I want to, like, if someone's saying I'm feeling depressed and that depression is keeping me from going to my kids' events at school. So I don't leave my house. Well, when do you leave your house is often a question. And some people don't even go to the store, but they may say, go to the store. I'm like, okay. So how often do you go to the store? Well, I make it maybe once a week. Well, can we set a goal of going twice a week? That's a measurable amount.
Right.
Or make it to, when's your child's next event at school? Can you make it to that event? And how long can you stay? 5 minutes? Okay, that's 5 minutes more than before. So it's setting measurable goals, so that you're able to check in and reflect and reevaluate how well you're doing at that. And then if you do stop and reevaluate, that's not a time to beat yourself up if you didn't make your goals. That's not that time. That's time to sit down back at the drawing board. What worked? What didn't work? Do I think if I gave this more time, it would work? Okay, how much more time? So being very clear and concise about these things. Like we've talked about, taking big goals, breaking them down into doable steps is super important. But a lot of times we just go into it saying, yeah, I'm going to lose that 50 pounds, but I don't know what I'm going to do to get there. And so that is definitely a super important part too.
Yeah. I think too, maybe we should, I think we live in a procrastinating society. That was interesting because I think you're right, but also on the other side of that, flip that coin over. We live in a society that is very demanding and very driven, and not
Critical.
always in, yeah, and not always in a healthy way.
Mhm.
And so sometimes, and I guess I just wanted to bring this up because I kind of felt bad for a little while. That perfectionist side gets me every time, you know. Um, I stopped setting resolutions, goals, you know, things like that. Um, I, because of my health. Um, I had some serious health things, and I really had gotten to a point where for a while I just had to say, thanks God for this day, and I'll be grateful if tomorrow comes, you know. Um, you know, I I've been a little too close to death too many times in the last decade. And I'm like the Energizer Bunny somehow. I get up and I go keep going forward, but I had to give myself permission, because in this society we don't like people that we have a way, we have languages and a vernacular in which we approach everything. And you know, we talk about that at church, you know, do people even understand us because we speak in this very certain way, right?
No, yeah.
And I
We have
think
certain
we do that.
terminology we only use,
Right,
yeah.
right. But I think we have that negative but very driven, and we don't even know that it's negative. Um, so I had to give myself permission to just be comfortable. My goal literally just, and I didn't even name it as a goal, but was just to focus on the next few hours in front of me. And that's, and I didn't call it a goal or a resolution or a decision. It was just, I had to really bring it down to very small. And but I guess I wanted to share that because I want people to know that that's okay. It doesn't, no matter what goals you're setting, no matter what you're doing, it doesn't have to be I'm going to lose 50 pounds. It could just be let me enjoy each day. And then maybe thinking about how I'm going to enjoy each day. Wake up and, you know, I did it the other day, and I even made a little post on Facebook. I'm scrolling through this thing, and I had a really rough night, and I saw this cheery good morning flower picture, and I'm like, I don't know if it's a good morning. This is not good, you know. And then I stopped myself, and I'm like, okay, well, how could I make it good? Okay, so I had my cup of coffee because that's important to me. Got to stop, refuel, if you will. But I also had a little quiet time, and I said a little prayer, and I was already feeling better. And, you know, I made a little post about it because I wanted to encourage people, and I got a lot of great responses on it. And I said, my day didn't start out to be that great, but I'm going to choose from this point forward. And that's that reflection piece, you know, that I reevaluating that I was never very good at. And I feel like I'm engaging in that. And so now that it's weird, because now that I'm getting healthier because of all these other choices that I've made, and wonderful modern technology and medical advancements, I'm going to be a bionic woman, I think, by the time I'm done with all of this. But um this year I went, do I want to make a New Year's resolution? Like, it was the first time I thought about it in probably more than 5 years. And I was like, why did you stop making them? And so then and that's why we're doing this podcast, because I really have been reflecting on that and my life and my dreams. And And I'm learning with my new emotional toolbox that I'm filling up to break things down, to stop, to evaluate, to have measurable things going, have specific things going. And it's really kind of great because T, you kind of hit on it just a little bit. I'm learning how to celebrate the little stuff, and be excited, so much so that I didn't even realize that I'd hit a huge, milestone in my weight loss. I have literally lost an entire person. I'm sitting there in my counseling yesterday and I'm talking about it. And I'm like, it's a whole person. When I was in high school, that's what I weighed, and I was like, well, shit, about 5 pounds less than that. But I just was like, you got to be kidding me. And I hadn't even, like you said, I breezed right past it and I wasn't even thinking about it. And I did the math and I stopped and I went, holy cow, Lori,
Right.
I've lost 140 pounds, a whole person. I had a whole person right here attached to my body and it's not there now. And
Well,
I needed to celebrate that.
yeah, and I think
I
it's
don't need to
important.
celebrate those.
Yeah, it is, and I think it's important too. I want to make sure the listeners are catching on to what we're saying is that my goals are not Lori's goals. Lori's goals are not Tina's goals.
Oh, yeah.
And I think a lot of people will look at resolutions in a group setting and say, well, they made 4 resolutions. Why did I only make 1? Or their goal is to lose 50 pounds. Why is my goal only lose 20? So we have to remember every goal we set for ourselves is relative to ourselves and we should not be comparing ourselves to other people.
We should never be comparing ourselves to other people.
Lori and I were talking last night, about I don't mind teasing myself about my weight and, making it obvious that I know the jokes out there about bigger people because I'm confident in my skin and I'm proud of who I am. Lori has a different perspective on it. But I've grown to love myself for who I am. So I think that's part of why it's been hard for me to pursue losing weight because I'm afraid of what I might look like when I lose 150 pounds. And I watched my mom lose a lot of weight and her cheeks were starting to sink in and she just looked thin and she just didn't look healthy. And
she was also sick and she had cancer.
No, this was before she had the cancer. But when she started losing weight because of the cancer, yes, she did look very pale and sickly. But for me, it's just like, I don't know what my weight would look like at my goal weight right now. Like, I don't know what I'd look like because I don't remember a time I was ever at that weight. Because as I've talked, I've been this way all my life. I was teased in elementary school and high school. I heard the snickering. I heard the funny jokes. And so now I kind of joke about it. And Lori's like, that's stupid. You shouldn't be doing that. That's just, it's like, I hate teasing. And it was just because Lori's not that way, and I understand, like, Lori growing up was not overweight. She grew up differently. Her weight came when she was older as an adult. Mine has been there since I was, born, so we have different perspectives. So her perspective is from somebody who was kind of overweight later in life, whereas mine is, that's why I'm bringing it up because I want to say that, like, we have to remember our goals may not look like somebody else's, but they may be as important, if not more important for us.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that
caveat that I will add, because I was a part of that conversation, is that I do believe in the power of the right words and building up and You don't get that when you're shaming or teasing or being like that's never gonna go up those rungs. That doesn't bring you up the rung. And that I just wanted to clarify, that's really what I have a problem with, is when it doesn't help you go up the rung. I understand that there are people that are more comfortable with teasing than I am, but shame is never a healthy thing. It's just not.
It's
And
not. It
that's
just,
what I have
I
a
don't
problem
see what
with.
I'm doing for me as that, because I have a different mindset than you do.
Yeah.
So
But
I
I just
know our
wanted to
perspectives
clarify.
are,
It's not like
yeah, no, I
I
get
get
it.
that people joke and tease and whatever.
Yeah.
I said it last night, I hate April Fool's Day
Yeah.
because I've seen so many people end up in tears or mad or
And again,
frustrated. And I don't like that,
that
you know?
exactly. And that's our perspectives. We're different perspectives. So everybody's going to have different perspectives on their goals, their resolutions. And some may say, I don't call it a resolution, I call it a goal. And some may say, well, I call it a resolution. And that's okay too, because
Whatever word you want to use,
exactly.
as long as you can make it work for you.
And we're
Exactly.
certainly not saying don't set resolutions.
Right.
Don't do New
Exactly.
Year's resolutions, because they can be fun and they can be productive. We're
Hey, and
just
there are
talking about
9%
why
of people they
sometimes
work
they're not.
for.
Yeah.
I
So
love-
a couple of things that I've noticed as we've been going, and maybe it's just in my head, but we've got a lot of R words. So I want to go
Yes,
back over that.
yes,
Right.
let's go back over
Right.
them. I
We
love these
started
R
off
words.
with resolution. Resolutions are great. It's resolve. It's that. And then we talked about reevaluate and reflection. And then we talked about routines, and we talked about reasons. We didn't call it that, but what are our reasons? Because that's important. Like EJ was just saying, what are our reasons for this? And it's only important to us. It's not important. It's not about what others think of our reasons. They're
And it
our
doesn't mean
reasons.
that, yeah, and it doesn't mean that somebody can't encourage you,
Right.
like to hold you accountable. That's different
Right.
than, yeah.
Right. So then we also have redefine. We need sometimes to redefine success. Sometimes we need to redefine how we approach things, or what the results, like I said, success. So that's really important. Another one that came up for me, based on what was being said, was refuel. Sometimes we need to stop and refuel.
I
We
like
need to
that.
take care of ourselves. We need to just rest and refuel.
That's a huge part of self-care,
Mhm.
right? And putting that oxygen mask on. Sometimes we need the oxygen mask, and it's so important to remember to put it on
Yes.
ourselves, and not, because I've shared many times in this podcast, and everybody who knows me, I run around trying to save the world. Here, have an oxygen, my counselor will often say, would you talk to yourself like that? And I'd be like, well, or would you talk to your grandchildren like that? And I'm like, no. Well, then why would you talk to yourself like that? And I was like, thanks for that reminder.
Right.
So yeah, we have to, I love that refuel. I like that.
Yep. And then what all this kind of boils down to for me is know and own the why. Why are we doing it? Know and own it. It's ours. It's nobody else's. And then honor who we are in the process.
Yes.
But we can't do that unless we know who we are.
Yes. You mean if we're constantly running away and not dealing with those things, we won't. Yes.
Sometimes we just think we know, and we just do everything on the fly because that's the pressure we're under. But we forget sometimes the why.
That's that part of that culture that I was trying to reference. That I don't feel it's a dark side and unhealthy side of the culture that we live in. We're not supposed to stop and reflect. You just keep going. You just keep, and not that keeping going and putting one foot in front of the other is a bad thing. You
There's
set
a time and place.
resolutions are not bad, but there's a lot of things that go into those resolutions that if you don't engage in them, that's why they're not working, and that's why they're not sticking. And then it can become a negative big mess, and then you just give up and become part of the 90% of people that don't make it.
And that's another thing. Make it fun. Have fun with it. I mean, sometimes we just take ourselves way too seriously and judge ourselves so harshly that we forget to have fun. And if we're having fun, man, it's just, we'll set another one and we'll do another one because it was fun. Not always easy, but fun.
So I'm
Yeah,
gonna,
you and I need to get together on one of those commitments that I made now. It'll depend on my next surgery, but we need to go dancing because
Ooh, line dancing.
I'm there. I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah, have to be careful right now with the knee recovery, but
Right.
twisting the knee doesn't really work right this moment.
so I'm going to dive into, I don't tend to do this, but I'm going to dive into this. So I want to talk a little bit about the golden circle. It's a Simon Sinek, Sinek, has this theory called the golden circle. And imagine 3 circles inside of each other. The outside circle is called the what circle. The middle circle is called the how circle. And inside that is the why circle. So the what represents everything on the planet, what they do, the organizations. This is often used in business because the goal is to figure out what your business has its why. What is your why? How do you get there and what are you doing? So, for a business per se, it's the what is what you're selling, what you're doing, who you work with. The how is how they do those things, how they make the products, how they do the things. So for us, in the discussion we're having is, what are we talking about? We're talking about the resolutions, all these R's that we're talking about: redefinement, routines, reflection, results, refueling, resting. Then how do we get that? What is that looking like? Are they easy? Are they hard? Are they challenging? Do we need accountability? And then the why being why we're doing it. Are we doing it for our health? Are we doing it so we can be there for our family? Or are we trying to do it for other people? Because if you're trying to do a goal, if you're setting a goal because you want to do it for somebody else, more than likely you're going to be in that 91% that fails at it because you're not doing it for the right reasons. And that's where this why comes in. And I'll put a link into this, the whole kind of article about the golden circle, because we actually did an entire year at church in Tacoma 4 or 5 years ago. And the whole year was called Know Why, trying to narrow in on what our why was for our faith and our spirituality. So in this case, what's our why for why we're making these resolutions or setting goals? And I love that kind of golden circle because that's what we were talking about. Why are we doing it? How are we going to get there? And
What will it look like?
What will it look like? And kind of also one of you might be able to remember it, but when you set goals or something, they have to be actionable. And there's some others, I don't remember the other terms. Measurable.
And attainable or realistic.
Yeah, and it had an acronym that went along with it or something like that. So I'll have to find it because those are also things, because when you want to set goals, you want to have something that's like, you want to have accountability. You want it to be something that you can do, and you want to lay out the actual steps for it. You want it to be manageable, things that you can do. You're not going to eat the whole cake at once. You're going to eat a bite at a time. Maybe. Sorry, that was a bad description.
I'm going to bring that down now. I'm going to have a quarter of a piece of a cake and just love that one bite because that's about all I can get down now.
Well, and I'd rather say that than, I think the traditional one is, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? And I hate talking about that because, like, you don't eat
You don't want
elephants.
to
I'm
eat an
sorry.
elephant. I
Yeah.
don't want to eat an elephant either. It sounds
Yeah.
disgusting. And what are we doing? And how cruel?
But again, the whole, it's because it's a giant thing. How do we get there? It's one thing at a time. And that, again, that was like the ladder that my trainer was showing me, was like the big steps, or do we look at the little steps? Those are the actionable, manageable steps that I can get to. So these kind of all correlate and kind of boil down to kind of what this discussion is all about.
I think one of the biggest things I'm learning, and I'm watching, my partner over here, EJ, learning it too, is that once we do those steps, because those are for us, right? I think another huge key to success is then recognizing and knowing that we're not alone in what we're doing, and that we do have roommates, friends, siblings, trainers, doctors. We're not, yes, we have the very first thing in making these things successful is that why, for ourselves. But then we do have to, I think a huge part of the success piece is realizing that, like you said, EJ, you had one day where you weren't going to do it. I had a day where yesterday I was like, I'm not going. I'd already said in my head, I'm not going. I'm too tired. This is not going to work. We don't have enough time. I mean, I came up with 50 million reasons not to go get in that pool yesterday. And I finally was like, well, you're out of time. So are you going? And I went, and of course I love that I went, whatever. But part of the reason I felt that I had that success is I have a partner in this with me who is along that journey with me. And no, we don't have to have the same goals, the exact same goals, but currently you find someone that has a similar thing, and then you go on that journey together. We're part of a community. What's that phrase that, I think it was the Clintons that came up with, or it takes a village to raise people, a child. I think the same thing. My other caregiver and I were chatting, and we were both talking about how we don't talk to our neighbors the way, we used to. We don't stop. There's all these things where community is almost being wiped out. And that could be a whole nother thing. But I want to focus on you're not alone. And it's okay to ask for help. And it's okay, yesterday my PT had asked me to try something in the pool. Oh man, I was trying. And EJ's, down the other end doing her thing. And I was getting frustrated. I stopped, like, okay, just see if Erin can, come help you. So I called out and I'm like, when you get a minute, can you come help me with something, And so she came down, and we realized, nope, that thing wasn't going to work, but we found some other things that did work and a different way to do it. But I wouldn't have thought of those things on my own. And so it was so great to have a partner down at the other end of the pool doing her thing, that I could, come in there with different ideas and different things. I just think it's so important to remember we're not alone, and we actually do better when we do it with someone, with our family, once we determine that why, then we got to open up, I think. Is there a psychological thing with that, T?
No, I think it's just knowing. I think people assume that to be strong, we must do it on our own, but strong people have strong people around them.
Right.
So I think I think that that is a whole topic by itself, is when, why do we think sometimes we have to go it alone? What is it? What is that all about? But I do think it is definitely something that we do need to keep in mind when we're making plans, we're making goals, is when we're looking at the how are we going to get there? Sometimes the how is who.
Who am I going to do it
Who's
with?
going to, who's going to go with? Who's going to help? Who can do this? Who can do that? The best leaders know how to do that.
Yep. Yep. I think that's a great ending point. So, and I think I know all of us, want to wish you Happy New Year's. We do wish you all the best in making your New Year's resolutions if you choose to set them, or whenever you choose to make these goals. We hope you have success, and you know, if you're close with us, I'm sure any one of us would want to help you on that journey. So definitely reach out, and please continue to let us know the topics that you want us to be approaching. And I think we definitely need to go back to near future into this whole community thing, and I think it would be an important issue to come back to. So thanks
feel
for
like the
listening to us.
feel like the massive community could be a future topic.
Yes.
All right, just a friendly reminder that anything we discussed in this podcast is not to be used as a diagnosis or replacement for conversations with your own doctors, therapists, psychologists, or other medical professionals. This episode is available on YouTube and most major podcast platforms. And if you're not a subscriber, we'd love for you to be one. So don't forget to like and click subscribe button to keep up with our upcoming episodes. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram as Behind the Mask PC. You can also email us for feedback and future episode ideas like Lori suggested at behindthemaskpc@gmail.com. Links to myself, EJ, Lori, and T are in our description box. And on behalf of the ladies and myself, have a happy new year and thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye.
Bye.